Today we have Judy Sedester joining us from grants.gov. She's Senior Program Manager. Really excited to have her on. She's an incredible source of knowledge, and she's going to get us kicked off here in a moment. We're just waiting to make sure that that audio is okay.
So what I want to do is switch to a different audio. Am I still sounding robotic?
You are, and you know, if you sign off real quick and then just join back, it should fix everything. Unless in your bottom left corner of your window where it says select a microphone, you can hit save in the system and then change it back to the original, and it should also fix that issue. And again, thank you all for your patience as we join here. It was working, like I said, a minute ago, but with Zoom and the technology, you think we'd all have it figured out by now, but it breaks on us every now and then.
Okay, now do I sound better?
That's perfect. That is incredible.
Well, that was a good solution. Thank you.
Yeah,
and thank you for a very kind introduction.
Thank you, Judy. And so I'll go ahead and let you kick it off and hand off the virtual microphone for the time being.
Okay, thank you. So what I'm going to cover today are basically, it's an overview for applicants, particularly those who have never submitted a grant application, a federal grant application that is. And for those of you who have, hopefully this will serve as a refresher and not be too boring. So some of the topics I'm going to discuss are how to navigate grants.gov, the registration process that all applicants need to go through when submitting a grant application for federal grants, how to search grants on grants.gov, what an actual funding opportunity looks like, using the Workspace function to prepare and submit your application, making sure you track your application to see it through its final submission, through all the validation steps. And at the end, I'll provide some tips and support resources. So if you go to our homepage, it's going to look like this. And what you're going to be most interested in, I believe, is what we have highlighted here, the Search Grants tab and the Applicants tab. We have a lot of resources on our site that if you click on the Applicants tab, you'll see we have YouTube videos that have been separated into little 2 to 3 minute snippets that cover every function that you would need to access as an applicant on our site. We also do trainings like we're doing today. There's other additional information. We have an online user guide as well if you click on the help link at the top of the page. We also set up a page a few years ago that highlights the how to learn more about grants, federal grants. We have information about grant policies, basically how applicants or how grant opportunities are created, that they come from policies that also are usually translated from some legislation that's been passed. There's also grant terminology and a basic grants 101. So it's always a good idea to take a look if you have questions about that. There's also links to all the federal grant making agencies that post federal grants in grants.gov. You can also sign up once you create a grants.gov account. You can also sign up to receive email notifications sent to your email box. You can subscribe to receive messages for certain funding opportunities or for certain agencies when they post funding opportunities and other items of interest that you may find very convenient. So Here, I'm going to talk about basically the steps for registering an organization. Now, if you're an individual, you don't need to go through this process. But if you are an organization or a part of an organization, you'll need to first start by getting a DUNS number. And for the time being, you can continue to get DUNS numbers at the link below. It's the Dun & Bradstreet website. And I'll make sure that you get these slides as well, because it's a lot of details and a lot of information. So if you've missed something, you'll get this information as well. And again, on our website, we have a lot of resources for applicants.
And Judy, a DUNS number, it comes at no cost to any organization, correct?
That's correct. Applying for a federal grant costs nothing. Getting a DUNS number costs nothing. And also getting an account with the sam.gov website costs nothing. So if someone attempts to charge you money to either register or to create or submit an application for you and they charge you money, unless it's a grant writer. Other than that, it's fraud. There's a lot of fraud. So at any rate, the next step, once you have a DUNS number, the person that's responsible at your organization for most of the business processes that take place, we call this person the electronic business point of contact, or EBIS POC. That person would go into the sam.gov website and create an account using their DUNS number. Now, the electronic business point of contact is the person that oversees, basically is responsible on behalf of the organization that basically allows people access to grants.gov and gives them roles based on what they will be doing in grants.gov. For instance, you may have program managers that will need to, say, write a part of the grant project narrative, or you may have people that just work on the budget, or you may have people within your organization that you want to actually submit the application. There's various roles that you would be required to assign to those applicants affiliated with your organization. Let me just say that the sam.gov site can take a while to complete registration. I know that because of the current situation we're in with the pandemic, with the CARES Act, and then lately with the American Rescue Plan monies, sam.gov has been hit pretty hard by people trying to register or renew their accounts. And I know that the SAM is giving people extensions and allowing their information to move forward into our site so that they can actually submit applications for these monies. So try not to be too worried about it, but if you don't already have a SAM account, you're going to want to make sure that you begin that process. Once all the SAM data is in sam.gov and your account becomes activated, all of your information, your organization data, your EBIS POC information will all be transferred from SAM to grants.gov. And this is how we can tell you are who you say you are, because you have a DUNS and you have registered and have an active account with SAM. And if you want information about the latest updates or notices and so forth, just an FYI that you can find all that information on their website. To the right of the screen, we have in orange some information about what we call the Unique Entity Identifier, or UEI for short. And this is basically going to take the place of the DUNS number. You don't have to worry about that now. That's not going to actually happen. It's going to happen slowly over the next year or so. So, be aware that there is a change coming to the DUNS number, but it's not so important that you worry about it right now. And a note to the e-business point of contact that's registered on behalf of your organization in SAM, that EBIS POC must renew the annual registration must renew their registration annually. If they don't renew their registration, their account becomes inactivated and they have to go through the whole validation process again. So if you currently have a SAM account, it needs to be renewed. Make sure you get on top of that well before it's about ready to expire or become inactivated. And at the end, I can take any questions that you might have. This is a lot of information. It's sort of detailed and boring, but anyway, they are important points. So once you get your SAM is activated, well, actually, in the meantime, if you're not the eBiz POC, or even if you are, you can always at any time sign up for an account with grants.gov. And then once your organization, if they're still going through the process of the SAM registration, once the account becomes activated, then you can affiliate yourself with that particular organization account through your DUNS. Again, all this information is on our website. So there's 3 primary roles in grants.gov. There's the eBiz POC, which I've talked about. And then on the applicant side or the participant side, there is what we call an AOR role. Now, an AOR role stands for the Authorized Organization Representative. And someone with the AOR role is the one that can actually submit applications on behalf of your organization. If you do not have an AOR role, you will not be able to submit. There's also another role we call Workspace Manager role. And the Workspace Manager role is important that each organization has at least one person with that role, because for the most of you, I'm pretty sure most of you, or if not all of you, will be using Workspace to prepare and create your application, get it ready for submission, and then actually submit the application. So someone needs to have Workspace Manager role. With the Workspace Manager role, you are able to create a workspace or many workspaces if there's a funding opportunity that you're interested in applying for. And then you are responsible for inviting people into that workspace to help you prepare the application. There's no reason why you can't have both of these roles, or all 3 for that matter, if you are a very small organization, you don't have a lot of staff. But those roles will become more clear to you once you've basically got in and tested things out and become familiar with it. So all the federal grant-making departments throughout HHS, not only their departments, but their agencies, their sub-agencies, and I'll use HHS as an example. So HHS, which is the US Department of Health and Human Services, is the department. And under that department, you have several agencies. You have NIH, which we all know has been in the news, and CDC as well, and FDA and CMS and several other agencies that fall under the umbrella of Department of Health and Human Services. And it's similar with other departments as well, such as the not EPA, they're not a good example. The Department of Commerce, they have sub-agencies such as NOAA, NIST, Economic Development Administration, and so on. So, we kind of use that term, departments and agencies sort of interchangeably, depending on the program that you're interested in. So what happens is that the federal government grant-making agencies, departments, are responsible for posting their announcements. This is for discretionary funding, not mandatory grants or those kinds of funding that get submitted, or not submitted, but get funded every year. But this is discretionary grants that are posted on grants.gov. You will need to go to search grants.gov to find those opportunities. This is what our search page looks like. It's sort of busy, but trust me, everything that's posted that is required to be posted is on this site. And there's several ways, different ways that you can search the site to look for and find what it is you're looking for. Now, under the status, when you're looking at grants.gov, under the status, the opportunity status, the default is checked as forecast and posted. Forecast means that an agency has posted an opportunity that will be, depending on availability of funds, will be posted in the near future, which means it'll be open for you to find and apply, begin the application process for. And the word posted means that it's currently open in grants.gov. We also have a couple of other statuses. If it's in the closed status, and you have to check the box next to the closed or archived, the closed status basically just means that the opportunity recently ended and the grant is closed. And archived, if you look, that number on the screen capture there says it's almost 51,000. Those are past funding opportunities that have been posted over the years. And if you can't find anything that's available today or next week that's being forecasted or what have you, you could always look under closed or archived to see if, for instance, an agency such as EPA or the Small Business Administration or whatever has ever posted in the past an opportunity that you would be interested in applying for. And you can often get information about that program by basically looking at that opportunity. And sometimes you can find contact information. So if you get a contact person, you can always reach out to them to get more information, to basically find out, well, will you be posting or will you be offering these funds in the future? So that's the reason why we keep all that there. The funding instruments are also listed, and they're usually checked as a grant or cooperative agreement. And what's actually in an opportunity? So if you click on an opportunity, it's a link that will take you to, first off, if it's a forecast, and we just spoke about those a few minutes ago, they'll have an estimated post and due date listed. They'll also have an estimated program funding amount that they plan to fund for that particular program, and an estimated award date. And sometimes there's no forecast, but if there's not, you would click on the synopsis, and that would give you a quick view into what this grant program is about. It's going to give you basic information such as the actual funding opportunity announcement number, the open and close date, the estimated amount of program funding that the agency is planning to award, and the estimated number of awards the agency is planning to make. So you get a snapshot basically of some pretty important information. And if you were to scroll down a little bit further in the synopsis, you'll see information about the program itself. There'll be a synopsis about what the program is about, a description, and sometimes they'll have information about what they're looking for and the eligibility criteria for applicants that want to apply, as well as contact information where you can reach out for more specific information about that program. Sometimes agencies will go in and modify an opportunity. They may extend the deadline date, or they may change the criteria in some way. And if they do, there'll be a record of it. And we call that record can always be found under version history. So you may want to just check and see if the agency has made any changes to that opportunity at any point. And if they have, you'll see if you go back. So if you're taken directly into the latest synopsis, say synopsis 2, but you see that there was a synopsis posted before that, and you click on that, you'll see the modified areas highlighted in the gray. Now, related documents is also a tab that's part of the opportunity, and you'll want to take a peek at that as well, because agencies often, not always, but often and more will, I think, begin to start posting related documents such as the entire description of the opportunity, what it is they're expecting, and other pertinent information that they want you to have regarding the program. Sometimes they'll even post a form in there that they want you to upload to a package. And now we will go to the actual package itself. So the application package itself is really a list of forms that the agency is requiring that you fill out and submit. This list of forms will allow you, if you take a look at it, allow you to get an idea of what it is they're expecting you to fill out. There are validations in those forms, and you'll need to make sure that you fill them out correctly so that your application is submitted timely, because I cannot stress enough how important it is to submit applications before the deadline. A lot of these federal funding opportunities are very competitive, and agencies are not very forgiving if you miss deadlines. So we talked a little bit about Workspace. So Workspace is basically a section that we set up on our site. It's a space where applicants can go to begin creating their application. This is where the person that has the Workspace manager role will go to create an opportunity based on a funding opportunity that they found and they are interested in applying for. Again, that Workspace manager will add collaborators to the Workspace and collaborate with them, obviously, to create the entire application itself. And then also at the end, submit. This is basically a screen capture of what a typical Workspace may look like. Someone who's just started or just created the opportunity, and they now need to fill out the forms. There's not a timeline, but a bar that shows you where basically the status of your Workspace, to see it through to basically to where the agency receives the application. What's nice about Workspace is that applicants can work on their application forms and attachments and so forth that they need to upload to those forms at the same time, which makes it really nice that everyone's sort of in the same place and they can all be on the same page. And before the person with the AOR role, authorized organization representative, is ready to submit, they can look through all these forms to make sure everything is the way it should be before they actually hit the submit button. Again, the creator of the Workspace would be the person responsible for adding participants into the Workspace. Now, we do have a role that's basically we refer to as the participants. And those are people that basically work with the team. They don't have a role other than they're just a participant. They are not the Workspace manager. They're not the AOR. They're not going to be actually submitting the application. And you can basically let anybody into your Workspace who has a grants.gov account. It will depend on what role they have as to what they will actually be able to do in the Workspace. And this is kind of like just a review of what the roles are. Again, you have the EBIS POC, assigns all the roles to the members of their organization. And then the person that is assigned AOR role can go into any Workspace affiliated with that organization and submit the application when it's ready to be submitted. Again, we have the Workspace manager who creates the Workspace and who adds participants. And a participant, like I just said, has no real specific roles. Also, it's good to note that if a Workspace manager, a person with Workspace manager role creates a Workspace, they can actually hand off that Workspace manager, that Workspace to someone else that say they need to do something else and they no longer want to be managing it. They can, like I said, hand that off to someone else within the Workspace. So we have two ways to submit applications. You can, as an applicant, you can download a PDF and fill it out offline, then upload it back into the workspace, or you can just create, excuse me, you can just create your application with a web form or a particular form with using the web form. You don't have to download or upload. And when all is said and done, one user may create or fill out the form by downloading the PDF, filling it out and uploading it. And someone else in the workspace may just use a web form to fill out that particular form. Those forms, either one will work with a particular workspace. It doesn't have to be all or none as far as the type of forms you use. You can also reuse forms from other workspaces, which many people find very helpful because then you don't have to worry about typing in the same information again. In the web form, there are fields that are required, and you'll see that, as you move through the forms. Usually those forms will have a red asterisk, and they are required. You'll also be asked to attach documents at times within forms. And all that information, what the agency is looking for from you will be spelled out in their instructions or their guidance. It just depends on the agency. They use those terms interchangeably. They'll call them instructions. They'll call them full announcement. They'll call them guidance. But that will basically tell you what sort of format they're looking for and what kind of documents they're expecting you to submit with your application package. And then again, I was talking about the PDF forms. There's just some basics. They're PDF, Adobe PDF. So you have to make sure that you have a compatible version of Adobe if you're going to use that way of creating or filling out your forms. Again, if you're using the PDFs, all the fields highlighted in yellow are the ones that are considered mandatory, so you must fill those out. And again, you can reuse forms from even other workspaces. Again, that's one of the very helpful things that our applicants have found over the years. One of the ways that you would do that is you would search through your past Workspace forms, and a form with the same title could be reused. Then you basically just click on it and import it into the Workspace itself. And any of these, if you have questions, we have a help desk that's available 24/7, and I'll give you that information at the end. It's important that applicants, once they've submitted, track their application submission to see it through to the very end, which will be received by the federal agency who will be funding that particular grant program. So there's various stages of validation, and these steps or stages, they occur pretty quickly. So if you're the AOR and you're submitting the application, the minute that you hit the submit button, you're going to receive a confirmation receipt. It's going to show up on your screen, and it's going to provide you with a grants.gov tracking number and the official date and time stamp of your submission. You as AOR will also receive these email confirmations as well. So again, the first is the submission receipt email. This receipt email is going to say, your application has been received by grants.gov, and we are verifying the receipt. And then the second one will be grants.gov verified a successful submission, or your application was rejected due to these specific errors, and it'll provide you with a description and encourage you to edit your application submission and resubmit. And the last email that you typically get is the agency has received your application and has basically retrieved it from grants.gov. So that's the key. That's what you want to make sure has happened. And in some cases, agencies will also assign their own agency tracking numbers. Some of the bigger agencies do that, but the key for you is to make sure that that agency goes into grants.gov and pulls your application in. You can track the status of your submission if you're logged in. And as this example shows here, the last tab where it's in blue where it says agency received basically means that the agency has retrieved your application. You can also, this is a good point, you can also, after you've submitted, you can go in and look at the actual file. You can download it. It's a zip file that grants.gov receives. You can download it and make sure that you have submitted everything that the agency has requested that you submit, if there's any question. And if there's a problem, then just resubmit. You can also track your application from the interface itself by entering the, basically entering the tracking number. A few years ago, grants.gov created a mobile app that many people have found very helpful. You can search on the mobile app. You can add and edit your saved search queries. You can receive notifications, sign up to receive notifications. You can receive notifications on submitted applications. You can actually complete the application in the app. I don't know if I would do that, but you certainly could, and I know people have. And we get a lot of users on this app, so it's pretty intuitive to use. And lastly, here we are with some tips that we provide. So one of the biggest, most important things that you can take from this is to register in sam.gov and grants.gov as soon as possible, and also to submit your applications early. Don't wait until the deadline date to submit, because if you have an issue and you're calling the help desk at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time and the opportunity closes at 11:59 p.m. Eastern time, you may not have time to go in and fix any errors that may be in your application. Obviously, you want to thoroughly read and follow all the instructions that the agency has provided to you. It's a good idea to fill out the SF-424 forms first. The SF-424 forms are forms that every applicant needs to submit for a federal grant. If you fill out those forms first, the information is passed on to the remaining forms, and you don't have to keep entering the same information over and over. You also want to make sure you obviously include sufficient program and budget details. You also want to make sure that you're very careful not to use special characters when you create an attachment that you're going to upload. When you're creating the actual file name and size, you want to, like I said, limit. Do not use any special characters, and limit the size to 50 or less. The characters that you use to name your attachment. And again, those characters are the UTF-8 characters in file names. And if you're not sure what that is, you can look it up. But there's some basic characters that you want to make sure you don't use when you create a file and save it. You want to make sure too that you use the correct DUNS number, or in the future, the UEI, when creating a workspace. And I say this because we could potentially have grant writers on this call, and they may be affiliated with more than one DUNS. So you want to make sure that you're being mindful that you're using the correct organization DUNS when you are a part of the application process for that organization. and you fill out the 424 forms where it asks for DUNS or UEI. And lastly, you want to make sure that if you're going to be downloading and uploading the form, that you are using a compatible version of the PDF software, which is free from Adobe. It's important to use the Adobe Reader because the forms that we've created are created in Adobe and they just work better using Adobe. So I said early on that we have an applicant support center that's available 24/7, except for federal holidays. We have an email address, support@grants.gov, and a toll-free 800 number that you can call. And we also have a number for folks that are outside the country. They can call this number and their call will be forwarded directly to the 800 number. We have a social media presence now, and we have a Twitter account. We have a blog. We have system alerts that we send out, and we also have newsletters, and we have an address at community@grants.gov in addition to the mobile app. And you want to make sure that if you don't already have a grants.gov account, create one. Then you can sign up for all of these goodies like the blog articles and the email newsletters and alerts and so forth. And I think at this point, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. I apologize for all the details, but again, I will provide this to you in the form of a PDF PowerPoint so you can refer back to the things that we've talked about.
Thank you, Judy. I actually got a couple of emails asking me if we were going to share the presentation. And so those are the two things, or that's one of the two things I want to touch on briefly. This will be shared, this presentation. And also, if you have any questions, I'm going to begin my part of the presentation now as to what our congressional office can do and what the Congresswoman's office can do for you. But if you have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A below. Judy's presentation will be included once the webinar is uploaded to YouTube. It'll be in an email that I'll send out. But I'll go ahead and get started here with my presentation. Thank you again, Judy. And you shouldn't apologize for the details. That's what we're here for.
There's a lot of them. It'd be overwhelming if you're new.
All right, and so here, I'll go ahead and get started. And so thank you everyone for taking the time. I'll be quick just to leave about 10 to 12 minutes of Q&A so we can get to as many questions as we can. And so my name is Carlos Murillo. I'm the Congresswoman's district representative as well as her grant coordinator. So if you ever have any questions on grants or anything to do with grants, feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to go briefly over our agenda. What can our office do to help? And then what the topic of grant research and what a letter of support is. And if I go a little too fast or if you need me to repeat something, please, again, in the Q&A, type that in. So grants are typically, grants are the way a government funds ideas and projects. They're typically funded through Congress. And like Judy had mentioned, it's discretionary funding. So it's not every year. Sometimes they're 3 to 5 year programs. And every agency develops their programs very uniquely, very differently. So NIH versus the Office of Justice programs at the Department of Justice. And then, so we'll just skip through this. Assistance typically is rooted within the Constitution. I like to point out to promote the general welfare. Grants are just a way to help bring community projects and ideas to fruition. And so what can our office do to help? Typically, one of the biggest items that we do is preliminary grant research. So if you have an idea or a project, or if you're in an organization, a childcare center, you're with a university, you're doing research, whatever it may be, you don't know where to start, you can go ahead and reach out to me, send me an email, call our office, and describe, what your project is, what you're looking for. And then just let me know if there are any if you want to know what federal grants are available or just funding in general. And this process takes about a week, more often than not to make sure we get an adequate response with good information back out to you. Then we have letters of congressional support. So these are sent from the Congresswoman herself. Typically, they're sent to the director or the head of the agency where the application is going. It's a full and fair consideration letter, outlines what your project is going to do in the community, and just it advises the agency to look at your application with careful consideration and full, and kind of gives our support of that project over. And again, it is sent from the Congresswoman. Letters of support are a phenomenal tool just to get a little seal of approval from our office. And this process typically takes about 2 weeks or 10 business days for a letter of support. And I've, over the year that we've been working with letters of support and getting those updated, there have been individuals or organizations who have submitted them before 2 weeks saying that they need it by the end of the week. And typically with those cases, it's difficult to say no, or it's difficult to understand, I guess, in terms of deadlines. But if you can, please do your best to submit them with that request within 2 weeks of the deadline or of your deadline. And then communication with federal agencies is another big one. Two examples that I can think of are recent funding. One is the TRIO program with the Department of Education. So two of these programs exist with UTEP and one at El Paso Community College. And these programs were at risk of being cut simply because the agency hadn't announced who was receiving funding. And so we were able to communicate with them and get them their response and let them know that funding was going to be continued so that no program had to be cut or diminished in any way. And like I said, any communication with a federal agency, if you haven't heard back from an application, if you didn't receive an answer to a question, our office and I'm more than happy to reach out on your behalf to kind of understand what's going on, and if possible, turn it into casework, which is another resource that our office has. Please contact me. My email is at the end. Our office phone number, again, will be shared at the end, but I'll go ahead and type it into the chat as well, just to make sure that everyone has the office phone number and my email address. Again, grant research, newly formed organizations, reach out to me. I provide available funding opportunities, resources to help you get started, and just general information to help with the application. There's only so much that our office can do due to the Committee on Ethics and our federal regulations. So I can't share any private funding opportunities. We can't write letters of support typically for any private grants out of a foundation or a philanthropic opportunity, which is something that we've had to decline, even though it was an incredible project, just because of the scope of our limitations. And so I broke this down here. Again, when applying, we support projects and applications that would help our community. Please send these requests to me for a letter of support as soon as possible, just to make sure that we have enough time given to review the request, do our due diligence, ensure that it's something that we can partake in, contact the federal agencies, ensure that we have data that provides a strong letter of support and not just kind of like a general recognition. And again, that's about 2 weeks, 10 business days prior to your deadline, not to the application. And feel free, again, I'll write my email and the office phone number down in the chat to make sure you all have that. And so just some tips and advice from federal agencies that we've seen, as Judy had gone over. You develop a master checklist. You make sure that every task you have is completed, forms, attachments, formatting, and all requirements, very detailed and very thorough. Keep the audience in mind. Reviewers often use information contained with the application to assess the application. Don't assume that the reviewers are familiar with your organization or your work. Abbreviations and acronyms is something that we've heard, or that I've heard from folks over at USDA. And it's one of kind of the small details where just gives breadth to your application a little bit more. And then one of the final ones is kind of content proofreading. It's something that we see most often is that when you're constantly working on a project, people will see this day in and day out, and they might gloss over certain spelling or grammar mistakes that someone else might not have. And so content proofreaders, someone else different on the team who just has a moment to go over it and very thoroughly is a great way to just improve that probability that you have no errors and that your application isn't rejected simply for spelling and grammar. And then be careful in the use of the appendix. Don't use the appendices for information that should be in the body of your application. Here's a photo, a screenshot just of different resources that are available. I'll include this as well in that email address. There's a few that are very beneficial. Like Canada.org is a great way if you're not familiar with grants at all or grant writing. It was originally the Foundation Center, but it's a great place to start for individuals who are not aware of what grant writing is, or who are not familiar with the language or the work that goes in there. And again, grants.gov has a great learning page, and their blog as well is filled with tons of information that's useful. They have videos online, I believe in Spanish as well, for folks who do not have, who don't have access to that in the English language. Here. And so again, I just kind of blew through that a little bit quickly just to make sure that we had enough time for questions at the end. And so Judy, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up my presentation and just open it up to questions from the audience. Again, anyone in regards to any questions to grant funding, what our office can do, the process of getting set up with grants.gov. We have received a few questions in terms of fiscal sponsorship of a group who is under someone else's DUNS number and how they would apply. And so that organization themselves would have to either, if they want to apply through the parent organization that is sponsoring them, they can do that. But if they would want to apply themselves, they would have to have their own DUNS numbers for that organization. And okay, we have a question here, Judy, from Miss Barbara Walker. Is there a way to get data to show a timeline based on application to funding commitment for project funding?
Not that I'm aware of. I think you would need to speak directly with the agency that's providing the funding, the people that are managing that program.
Yeah, and typically what we see is, funding announcement to project to actually funding. It can be variable, just depending on the type of project.
A lot of things.
Right, when it was created. So there's no exact timeline when it comes to it, and sometimes even an agency will announce an opportunity, but they won't release the application because it's delayed for whatever reason. And so here, Ms. Marisol Carranza asked, in regards to the forms that can be reused on different opportunities, are those forms ever revised? And if so, how do you know not to use the old forms?
They are revised, and you would see, excuse me, you could check on our website, because if you looked on our forms, all the, one way to do it would be all the active forms, the latest forms are posted on our website under the forms link on the website, as well as look at the expiration date on the form. Each form has an OMB expiration date. So you would want to make sure that that date matches. In other words, you don't want to use a form that you, for an application that you necessarily submitted 5 years ago, because there's probably some changes. But typically the SF424 forms don't change in terms of fields. They don't add fields or delete fields very often. Agencies that create their own forms that we actually host and are on our site, they can change forms. So you want to make sure that they haven't changed. Like
Great. And so,
form.
sorry for interrupting, Judy. We also have some questions that were pre-submitted by individuals who registered. So one of them has to do with eligibility. So how do you know if you're eligible for specific grants? And if you're a nonprofit, or if you're a government educational institution like a public university? Is there a way to differentiate that?
Well, they often use that, they often post that within their full announcement information, as well as the synopsis. But if you can't find that information, you could reach out to the grant program office that is managing that program. They should be able to tell you. It should be spelled out, though, in their announcement, in their instructions that they create. Look under, again, look under the related documents tab, as well as the package itself. There'll be a set of instructions in there. Or the synopsis itself, description.
Great. And another question that I'll go ahead and tackle is in regards to the American Rescue Plan. So it looks like here someone had submitted a question asking that funding had been approved for a specific subset of health, education, and how those funds are being distributed, whether you have to apply. So for a large swath of these funding that's coming through from the American Rescue Plan is given through community block development grants that go to the state. And so then the state themselves, it's either dispersed directly to the institutions themselves based on census data, or typically it's dispersed to the state, who then they have that opportunity to give that funding or open application programs. And so I just wanted to take this moment to mention that federal grants are a great tool, but in continuing workshops here with our office, we're going to focus as well as on state and local grants, just to make sure that the opportunities aren't being missed. There's no, you don't leave anything out. Grants.gov, again, is a fantastic tool and a great way to get funding for your project. But a lot of, I think, what is it, Judy, 60% of funding goes directly to states from the federal government?
I don't know if it's 60% or not, but there's quite a few that are just for states. I will tell you that NIH awards the most discretionary grant funding for research, health research. I think they fund about 50% of all discretionary grants, but then the other agencies aside from NIH also have a lot of grants. Yeah, I think the best way, if you're not finding what you need on grants.gov, you need to dig a little further and find a contact at that agency, and preferably in that grant program itself. Or you can reach out to Carlos at his office, because he's going to be very familiar. And if he can't find it, he can escalate it up the chain. So he's a good resource for you guys to have.
Thank you. And on that, I'm actually going to type my my contact information here into the chat. And so, Judy, another question that we had was in regards to the DUNS number. We know it's free, but there was news that it was going to be changing to the unique identifier. Right. And that was delayed due to COVID. Is that going to impact people's applications through grants.gov?
No, it should not at all. For the time being, the grants.gov is accepting both UEI and DUNS, and so is SAM.gov.
And would an organization have to re-register for the UEI eventually? Or
I think they're going to be assigned by GSA, SAM.gov.
And I mean, it's not concrete, but as you know, if you have a DUNS, you won't have to reapply for it. It'll be given to you.
Yes, that's right. So the DUNS will be replaced with the UEI. I believe that all new organizations may actually be assigned UEIs and have been for some time. But there's more information about that on the SAM.gov website. We're actually a separate system. It's a slow process. It's been delayed because of the pandemic, and we have systems in place to, as best we can, to make that migration go as smoothly as possible. So it's good to ask questions, because I'm sure there's going to be some hiccups along the way. These are huge systems with many people hitting them every day. So it's good to, stay aware of those issues. And when we know things about the sam.gov site with respect to UEI. We post them. We have blog articles about them and so forth. So you want to just keep asking. For now, though, I believe DUNS and UEI are both being used simultaneously.
Great. And we actually had a couple of pre-submitted questions in regards to data and how to find the most up-to-date data for a grant application. And so this was asked by Luis Enrique Chu, pre-submitted, as well as a couple of other folks.
Okay.
So I just wanted to touch on that quickly. One of the other grant workshops that our office is putting together is going to be in partnership with the census. So they have great data tools in regards to the decennial census as well as the American Community Survey, and they're constantly being updated. And this is one of the strongest data sets that you can use. It's one of the most widely used as well in federal grant applications. And so again, just be on the lookout for that. That's actually the next one scheduled. We're working on confirming a speaker for that. Judy, I don't know if you want to just touch on that and just let everyone know.
No, I was just going to say, I know when I've worked in program offices before, a lot of the requirements that they would put in their instructions is, giving examples of census data or requesting census data on their particular area, community, congressional district, whatever. But yes, census data is highly considered.
Yeah, and it's right, and it's whether it's one of the most regarded as well, and just thought it to be as accurate. So again, thank you for that question in regards to data. And it looks like we have time for one more question. And it looks like the Q&A here is empty, but we do have one that was pre-submitted by Justin Millender. And I just wanted to answer this. He's looking for specific programs, whether or not they've been extended with financial assistance for people due to the pandemic.
There are several. You may not necessarily find them on grants.gov. I do know that the SBA has a couple of programs. They're basically direct payments that go to people, although they do have some application requirement. They are not going to be posted on our site, though. Our site is usually competing opportunities.
And again, thank you, Judy, because I wanted to mention that, competing versus given grants.
There's money out there for sure. It's going out. So SBA's had some holdups with their recent, they're giving, so for example, they have money for venues, shuttered venues. That's open now on the SBA website. There's also money for restaurant owners. And then I know that there's, money for people, for individuals, for various things, direct payments and so forth.
And again, feel free to contact me because a lot of those opportunities won't show up on grants.gov, even though they're federal and they're readily available. So again, my contact information is in the chat. I'll say it once before it's 1:01 p.m. before we log off, and just be aware of everybody's time here. My phone number for the office is 915-541-1400. And my email is carlos.murillo@mail.house.gov. And again, I'll share the contact information that Judy had shared at the end of her presentation with the 24/7 hotline, as well as the links to resources in the grants.gov webpage and social media. I personally use the grants.gov app. I love it. It's quick and easy to answer questions on the fly. And account's free. But again, if anyone has any questions or wants to know about the upcoming grant series workshops and webinars being put on by our office, feel free to email me and be on the lookout for this presentation and those documents sometime this week. But Judy, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I know you're over enjoying the East Coast. and yeah, have a good day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.